Jesus as Advaiti. Welcome to today's episode, where we dive into a fascinating theological perspective, Jesus as Advaiti. This idea brings together the teachings of Jesus and the philosophy of Advaita Vedanta, one of India's most influential spiritual traditions. Now, why does this matter? Because it's an attempt to express Jesus in a way that deeply resonates with Indian spirituality. If we're going to talk about Christianity in India, we have to engage with the profound spiritual wisdom that has shaped Indian thought for centuries. So, let's explore how Indian Christian thinkers like Brahmabandhab Upadhyay and Raimon Panikkar have used Advaitic ideas to understand Jesus. Understanding Advaita Vedanta. Before we connect Jesus with Advaita, let's quickly unpack what Advaita Vedanta is all about. Advaita, meaning non-duality, teaches that everything is ultimately one. It was systematized by Adi Shankaracharya in the 8th century. According to this philosophy, Brahman, the ultimate reality, is infinite and beyond all forms. Atman, the individual soul, is not separate from Brahman. Liberation, moksha, happens when we realize that our true self is divine and one with Brahman. This idea of oneness sounds pretty mystical, right? But interestingly, Christianity has similar themes, especially in the words of Jesus. I and the Father are one, John 10, verse 30. That they may be one, as we are one, John 17, verse 22. So, some Indian theologians asked, can we understand Jesus using this lens? Jesus in Advaitic terms. Let's now look at how Jesus is interpreted in this framework. Jesus as Saccidananda, being consciousness, bliss. Brahmabandhab Upadhyay, one of the first to develop this idea, described Jesus as Saccidananda, a classic Advaitic description of Brahman. Sat, being Jesus, is the eternal divine reality. Cit, consciousness Jesus is God's self-revealing wisdom. Ananda, bliss Jesus, is the source of divine joy and liberation. In this view, Jesus is not just a historical figure. He is the manifestation of the divine principle in human form. Christ as the manifestation of Brahman. In Advaitic Christology, Jesus is not seen as separate from God, but as the visible expression of the invisible divine reality. Just like how Advaita teaches that the world is an expression of Brahman. Incarnation as Avatara. In Hinduism, an Avatara is a divine descent of God into the world, like Krishna or Rama. Some Indian theologians see Jesus as an Avatara, but with a difference. While Hindu avatars come repeatedly, Jesus' incarnation is seen as once and for all, fulfilling a unique purpose in history. Salvation as self-realization. Traditional Christianity teaches salvation as forgiveness of sins. But in Advaitic terms, salvation is also about realizing one's divine nature, seeing oneself in union with God through Christ. This aligns with the Advaita idea of moksha, where one awakens to their oneness with Brahman. Theologians who developed this thought. Two key thinkers have played a major role in this interpretation of Jesus. Brahmabandhab Upadhyay, 1861 to 1907. The pioneer of Advaitic Christology, described Jesus as Saccidananda and the perfect manifestation of Brahman, showed how Christian theology and Indian philosophy could meet. Raimon Panikkar, 1918 to 2010, developed the idea of the unknown Christ of Hinduism, suggesting Christ is already present in Hindu spirituality. Saw Jesus as the mystical connection between God, humanity, and the cosmos, which aligns with Advaita's vision of reality. Both of them wanted Christianity to speak to the Indian soul in a way that felt familiar. Why does this matter? This perspective has some deep implications for Christianity in India. Building bridges between Christianity and Hinduism, using Indian concepts, makes the message of Jesus more relatable. Helps create dialogue instead of division between religions. Encouraging mystical spirituality. Indian spirituality values inner experience over intellectual belief. Advaitic Christology presents Jesus not just as a savior, but as a spiritual guide leading seekers to divine union, expanding the vision of Christ. This approach sees Jesus not just as a figure in history, but as the universal Christ, present in all creation, promoting social liberation. If God's presence is in every human being, then social hierarchies like caste discrimination have no place in a Christ-centered world. Challenges and criticisms. Of course, not everyone agrees with this approach. Here are some challenges. Risk of losing Jesus' historical reality. If we focus too much on Jesus as a mystical principle, do we forget his personal and historical identity? Blurring the line between creator and creation. Christianity teaches that God and humans are distinct, while Advaita emphasizes unity. Can we hold both views together? Different understandings of salvation. Christianity sees salvation as a gift of grace, while Advaita sees it as a journey of self-realization. Can these ideas coexist? These questions don't have easy answers, but they push us to think deeper about how Jesus can be understood in the Indian context. Final thoughts. So, what can we take away from all this? Advaitic Christology is a bold and creative attempt to make Jesus' message speak to the Indian spiritual mind. By engaging with Advaita Vedanta, Indian Christian theologians have expanded our vision of Christ, not just as a historical figure, but as the divine presence within all creation. Of course, there are theological tensions to navigate, but whether one agrees or disagrees, this approach remains an important contribution to how Christianity is understood in India. That's it for today's episode. If you found this discussion thought-provoking, make sure to subscribe and share your thoughts. Until next time, keep exploring, questioning, and seeking truth. See you soon.